Americans have long been fascinated by UFOs, and the public has seen the videos that our Navy pilots have taken. But do you think that we have been contacted by extraterrestrials?
Well, I have talked to those Navy pilots, and they are sure that they saw something real. And of course, we've seen their video from their jets. What is it? We don't know. So now that I'm here at NASA, I've turned to our scientists and I've said, would you, looking at it from a scientific standpoint, see if you can determine so that we can have a better idea? We don't know if it's extraterrestrial. We don't know if it's an enemy. We don't know if it's an optical phenomenon. We don't think so because of the characteristics that those Navy jet pilots described as they saw it move around.
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
The bottom line is we want to know, and that's what we're trying to do.
What do you think it is? I mean, what's your personal take on it?
I don't have an idea. That's why I turned to our scientists.
And what have they said to you?
Well, they're looking into it. Would you like me to call you when I get an answer?
Please, because I want to know just as much as you want to know, just as much as the public wants to know.
Of course.
And you know, the Pentagon, they will soon release their report on UFOs. But when people think of mysterious things flying in the sky and aliens, they think of NASA. So what have you guys been briefed about in terms of this report? Have you been involved in any way?
I was actually briefed on this a couple of years ago in my capacity on the Senate Armed Services Committee. NASA appropriately is going to look at it through the lens of its scientists, and that's what we're doing.
But do you think the agency should be more involved at this point?
Well, we are, and I've started it. I've been here a month, and I've started it.
And are you guys working with the Pentagon then on that report?
We are not directly working with them, but I can guarantee you if we find something, the Pentagon will want to know.
Look at that thing. It's rotating.
A U.S. Navy aircraft captured images of that rotating thing back in January 2015 off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida.
Well, look on the ASA. Oh my gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
Also in 2015, just a few weeks later, this happened. Watch as a Navy aircrew struggles to lock onto a mysterious, fast-moving object off the Atlantic coast.
Oh, got it!
Roger. There's troubleshooting.
Oh my gosh, dude. Wow. Look at it fly.
Former Navy fighter pilot Alex Dietrich told Anderson Cooper about spotting a strange flying object in the sky back in November 2004 off the coast of San Diego.
Enter stage left, the tic-tac, and that's what we affectionately refer to it as because that's what it looked like.
It was about the size of an aircraft fuselage.
It was white, it was in sort of a matte finish, just like a tic-tac. And it behaved in a way that we were surprised, unnerved. It accelerated, or it almost didn't accelerate, right? It sort of jumped from spot to spot and tumbled around in a way that was unpredictable.
Former Navy Commander David Fravor was on the training mission with Dietrich and remembers how the object quickly maneuvered.
Like a ping pong ball bouncing off a wall. The ability to hover over the water and then start a vertical climb from basically zero up towards about 12,000 feet and then accelerate in less than 2 seconds and disappear is something I had never seen in my life.
So what was it? The government won't say or maybe doesn't know. For decades, the Pentagon's research into these close encounters has been kept under wraps, along with the images and a now defunct $22 million program designed to investigate UFOs. So what are we to believe about moments like this?
Whoa, it's getting close. Whoa, splashed.
Members of the U.S. Navy captured that footage of an unidentified flying object spotted off the coast of California in July 2019, just before it vanished into the ocean. And with so few answers, extraterrestrials have become a favorite subject for conspiracy theorists, with much of the focus on a highly classified U.S. Air Force testing facility in Nevada, known as Area 51. Bob Lazar is the conspiracy theorist and former physicist who says he worked at the secretive government research site, Area 51. He says he was hired to reverse engineer a flying saucer buried there.
This came from somewhere else. I mean, as bizarre as that is to believe, but I mean, it's there. I saw it.
Others have bought into his claims that the U.S. government buried extraterrestrial technology at Area 51.
It looks like sand. It's made to look like the side of the mountain that it's in, whether it's to disguise it from satellite photographs.
So until someone says for sure what's really out there,
no sound, no blinking lights, just this big illuminated form.
We'll be left still to wonder. Randy Kay, CNN, Miami.
And joining me now is former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. While in office, he secured the money for a now-defunct Pentagon program investigating UFOs. He's also been one of the loudest voices calling for the government to release this information about these close encounters in the sky, or whatever these things are in the sky. So, Senator, let me ask you this. This report apparently says there's no evidence that these objects were alien spacecraft, but they're not ruling it out either. Were you hoping for more from this report? I know I was.
Well, I really had a preliminary run of what they were going to come up with, and it wasn't going to be much. And it isn't much. My take on this is that they should continue the research on this. It shouldn't be a one and done. I believe that one of the things I did that I'm glad I did, I made a decision because of my curiosity that I thought we should find out what, if anything, there was to these UFOs. And that's when I went to Stevens from Alaska and in a way from Hawaii, and said, I told him what I wanted to do. I wanted to spend some money to corroborate what they were trying to find out. And Stevens said immediately, he said, good, I want to do this. He said, there was a pilot in World War II, and there was something was in the air off to my left. I would go up, down, around, got low on fuel, came back down, landed. I asked air traffic what that was. He said, we didn't see anything. So with the money that we got from the taxpayers, we found that I thought maybe there'd be a few dozen people saying they saw things like this, but we learned that there were hundreds and hundreds of them. And so even though my staff said, stay the hell away from this, I was something I was bound and determined to do. They said it would hurt me, my re-elections. Didn't hurt me that much. I got re-elected. So I think it's a good thing for the country. It's a good thing for the world. And the American people can accept the truth, whatever is the truth. We need to be transparent in everything we're doing in the government. Let the American people know what we're doing scientifically and otherwise.
And Senator, I have to ask you, because I know the folks at home will want me to ask this question. Do you believe that these UFOs are alien spacecraft? And is the government trying to cover it up? You were the Senate Majority Leader, Senator, for a long time here in Washington. What can you tell us about both of those questions? Do you think they exist, and is the government covering this up? I do not know what they are. Yeah, I don't know what they are. No one does, to my knowledge, at this time. But that's why I say this task force that's going to report later this month should continue. We're not going to solve all the questions we have in a few weeks. We need to continue working on it. This is something that is interesting. It's important to the country, and it could be important to the world. And in that report, Randy Kay referenced Area 51, which you actually got to visit when you were in office. What can you tell us about what you saw there? These questions about whether things are buried there. What did you see?
Let me tell you that here's my most graphic memory. I go, there was a family by name Sheehan. They had a ranch, not a ranch, an old mining. It was kind of a place they would go on weekends and have picnics and barbecues. So one weekend they go up there, and there's military police. Their property's barred off. And so, what's this about? Well, the reason they did that is from that property of theirs, they could look down on Area 51, and that was the end of their weekend trips to their property. So I know Area 51. I've been there quite a few times. Saw some really interesting things. Much of it is still classified, but I remember looking at a Soviet helicopter that had come from someplace that we got. They also had a stealth helicopter they were working on at the time, was classified. So a lot of things went on at Area 51. It was just a short distance from there that we had the stealth fighter plane. There was people learned to fly, our airmen learned to fly there because the Soviet satellites would come over during the daytime, and of course they could see everything down there. So we did it at nighttime, so the Soviets couldn't see what we learned, what we were doing. And what they were doing is learning to fly these new airplanes. They did it all at night. Everything they did in pitch darkness. So it was very interesting. The Area 51 is important to the security of this country. It still is, and it has been for many decades.
U.S. military or intelligence reports. These were not civilian reports. These reports that were being taken by trained observers in some of America's most sophisticated platforms. And their observations were being backed up by gun camera footage and electro-optical devices, and further backed up by radar. So you had three independent sources of data collection that were all recording the same thing at the same time, at the same place, under the same circumstances. So these clearly weren't weather anomalies. These weren't artifacts of the camera. These were real, indeed, objects, and they were in our controlled airspace, and we did not know what they were. The government has spent decades looking into this topic through efforts such as Project Blue Book and ATIP and the UAP Task Force and others. And the fact that it is finally having an open conversation despite decades of denial, I think is a tremendous step forward. It's not nearly enough, however, because it is partial transparency, although better than no transparency, is still not complete transparency. And I think that this topic does not belong under the providence of any particular government, organization, or institution. I think it is a conversation that belongs to the American people, and quite frankly, could be the global community. Despite the decades worth of hypothesis by those people, both in the government and outside the government, that these could be some sort of secret U.S. technology, looks like we finally have closure on that. We now know it is not. So therefore, it can only be two possibilities. And that is it is either foreign adversarial technology, or it is something completely and totally different, an entirely different paradigm. I don't think you would have this technology locked up for 70 years in some sort of military technology. And first of all, our entire intelligence community not being able to figure it out. Secondly, for them to be able to keep it secret for so long. Third, not seeing that technology bled into something else that would be an indicator. I mean, if that's the case, then every one of their ICBMs would be a flying tic tac. You wouldn't need ICBMs. You wouldn't need a missile silo. You wouldn't need a launch vehicle. So I think it's ignorant for us to say, well, if it's not Russian or Chinese, it must be from the Pleiades or Alpha Proxima. Is it possible? Sure, but there's a whole bunch of other options that it could be too. We live in an incredible universe where there are realities all around us. There are dimensions. There's M theory, string theory. There's all sorts of hypotheses that suggest that the three-dimensional universe in which we live in, isn't quite so easy to explain.
It's not going to rule anything out or anything in, for that matter. I think what's important and what people can expect about this UAP report is I think it'll talk about the number of sightings. They're far greater than have been publicly disclosed before. I think there's been some leaking that there may be as many as 100. I'm not going to dispute that number. But what's more important, Trey, is that the number of sightings and recordings that have been picked up by what we call multiple sensors, that is visual, radar, ISR, satellite. And when you have multiple sensors under conditions where we see UAPs, it explains away a lot of the things like visual disturbances or things like that. And so, I hope the report will address why we can't answer some of these explanations, because here's the bottom line. When it comes to national security, ego can't be involved. If there's something out there that's bigger or faster and stronger, we've really got to answer that question. And so having a discussion about it is going to be a good thing.
Well, Johnny, you were a U.S. attorney before you came to Congress, so you're an evidence-driven guy. You've seen all the evidence. I'm not asking you what it is, but are you more skeptical, less skeptical, or the same on UFOs and life on other planets than you were before you were the DNI?
Well, again, I don't look at it from the standpoint of life on other planets. I look from the standpoint of national security, and here's what troubles me right now, Trey, is a lot of people say, well, maybe it's Russia or China. But some of the things that have been publicly talked about, we know for a fact from the intelligence community, we have high confidence that things like transmedium properties and hypersonic speed, meaning vehicles that go at 5 times the speed of sound, or Mach 5, Russia and China clearly didn't have those in 2004 when some of these things were cited and recorded. And so we need to get explanations for them. And, again, if someone is bigger, faster, or stronger out there, we need to know about it. And so we need to have a discussion where our sailors, our airmen, and our soldiers can talk about it and report it so that we have that information so we can figure out what it is to protect America.